Hey everybody, I'm Scott, creative director of The Green Sand, and this is episode 2 of the game dev for Jack of all trades. Today I'm going to talk about Haven-1, which is one of the space stations that will be in the final game, but it's for the prototype slash slice, vertical slice that I'm going for. it's uh, it's only one of the two levels that will be playable. So yeah, I'm going to talk about what went into the work of the thought process and a little bit about how it. Now this is all completely work in progress, and the station, the textures and stuff are pretty much there, but like the rocks in the background there, these asteroids they're called. They're in space. Uh, yeah, and the environment, planet, and everything like that, and the lighting is had a bit of a J.J. Abrams thing going on there, but it was mostly about the station. So let's see what went into that. Let's put this on pause here. So, and yeah, while talking about this, we get into a few of the differences between when you're working with a big team, a pipeline that goes into a big big game team, and then which the difference is between that and a small indie team, and then like a complete solo dev, which is what I'm doing right now. And for the most part, I mean, there's a lot of difference, but for the most part, it's just the manpower that you can throw at a task is where things differ, because like every single task has its own position. For like one guy does textures and nothing but textures, one person does uh, environments, that's it, hard modeling, organic modeling, and so on. And so how this would start with, like in a big pipeline, is someone has an idea, and usually it's a game designer, but it could be anybody in the team, depending what how your team works. It could be Bob from IT fixing the printer, and he has a great idea, and depending on how your team is, uh, they take that idea and run with it. Give credit to Bob, but so the thing is that depending on how big the egos are in each company. So I have an idea about space station, and the thing with the let's get this out of here, close that down. You have an idea of let's put that back up. You have this Dr. Seuss here instead. You have an idea of a what you want, and the idea for this was that I wanted to have there will be in the final game there will be tons of different kinds of space stations, but I wanted to stay away from the shopping mall space station and have more of a kind of working, kind of blue collar space station. So it looks like it's very practical, and it's made for. I had an idea that was uh, I wanted to be more like what we consider realistic at this time. This is supposed to be one of the oldest space stations out there when humanity was first pushing out and didn't know shit for shit, and they were out there with their primitive uh, tech. So I wanted it to look like it is a very uh, yeah, blue collar space station. And a lot of things I wanted to not only what we have now up there in space, but also like things like oil refineries and that kind of stuff. So it's so that's what the small brief to myself was, and that's how it works in the big pipelines. That you have this idea and you have some guidelines, and then you throw it at the people who go and make it so, and those people are the art director and with the concept artist, and some many times the art director himself is a concept artist. And I mean depends on your team. I've worked in pipelines that were smooth as butter, and I've worked in pipelines that were ass first up a tree. So it could be anything. But in an ideal world, your art director and concept artist start banging out uh, ideas and concepts based on those guidelines. So, and that's what I did. So let's take a look here. Let's start with maybe inspiration. So let's pop this up here. So first thing you do when I start something, not always, but many times you go online, get some inspiration. And so the guidelines for this were that I wanted it to be, you know, very realistic. I'm doing this realistic in the sense that it's something that's very familiar to us and what we associate with space stations. And then, because I have up here, you can see I have like things like this that I was looking at, and then like, no, this is way too sci-fi. And I mean, like I said, the idea is that there will be lots of different kinds of space stations, alien space stations as well. But for this, I wanted it to be very down to earth, if you can say that about a space station. So it's, you know, cylinders, and I wanted to have a ring. The classic, you know, like what we have here, Space Odyssey 2001, the ring going around, and nothing says classic space station to me other more than a a ring. And I was thinking about having it actually in under construction, or maybe well, see, because the thing is that yeah, the when you're playing the actual demo of this, it will be a derelict. It's something bad has happened and it's trashed the space station. Is and so because your character is a scavenger, you come upon it, and yeah, stuff goes from there. So yeah, like I said, oil refineries and these kind of things where there's lots of pipes, lots of stuff going on. You don't know a player. You look at this and you all you see is pipes and mechanical machines and engineering. It looks like it does something out in space. Yeah, so that's what I was going for. So from there, now one thing to keep in mind when you're doing this is this. As you can see, there's just a little handful of ref in inspiration. Now I've seen guys who well, yeah, some don't take inspiration at all. They just get to work, hack it out, or not hack it out, but they do it. And some will, yeah, spend days gathering ref and inspiration and putting in the folders. And I've seen guys who have had like thousands, and I'm not exaggerating. There's literally thousands of inspiration folders. And that's when the art director has to step in and say, hey, okay, enough is enough. And sometimes even the art director will give you the concept artist the, here's some ref. We like these. We like, you know, we like this NASA thing here. We like this oil refinery here. And, you know, this is what we're going for. So stick to this and, you know, have fun with it. Keep in touch with me and we'll go from there. And the art director will yeah, guide you along. But I've worked with art directors who have themselves been guilty of just piling and piling folders and folders of inspiration, and it comes to a point where you're walking a fine line, and you can very easily either accidentally be copying the stuff because that's all you see day in and day out, and then sometimes I know I've worked with guys who have just been fine with just ripping stuff off and using that, and yeah, that's another thing you just want to avoid. So after this, start whacking out some concepts, and for that I was well, I'll show what I eventually came up with. And so here, it's very simple. Just a pencil drawing. Throw some colors on there, and you can see it's very very noisy, kind of mashed up here. And what I did though was actually I made a bunch of pieces. All these here were separate pieces that I drew, and I kind of like kit bashed those pieces because I knew I wanted a ring. I wanted these kind of simple boxes and how they connect, and the cylinders were very important. You can see here that they're a very different color than I had at the end because I wanted. Originally, I was going for the white and blue and white look with some gold in there for yeah, bringing it out. And yeah, I'll get to that later about how changing these things works for different pipelines. But so yeah, I kit bashed this together, and as you can see, it's very easy to go haywire. And the thing is, for this, it's very important. One of the also the guidelines for this, it has to be modular. So we have one set of space stations, which is let's go back here. Well, that's we're in Unreal now. Let's go back to here. This guy, uh, but it has to be also possible to down the line use these pieces, and you can make a gazillion different versions of these kind of space stations. It can go up in that way. It can have, instead of 2 rings, it could have 3 rings down here. I think the rings could be in the middle, and it all has to fit together, snap together, and work without too much trouble. You don't want to have it just looking like it is actually just thrown together. It has to look like it fits together. These connections have to, even you don't have to be a technical engineer to understand, see something and understand that there's no way that this thing could be connected together. And that's also a fine line. That's why you usually have art directors, art leads, and just your co-workers as well, giving the feedback uh, about yeah, how to proceed with things. And so with this, let's go to Photoshop here. Here's the pieces that I made. Uh, just a simple angle and then from the side. I ended up using just the straight on from the side because it was just easier to piece things together. And here you can see, there was not really thinking about colors at this point. Just wanted to see the shapes. Got very kind of cluttered, but it's okay because I kind of was. I want it to be cluttered, but not too cluttered, and that's kind of like just of a preference. Is you'll be walking along those in the later game. Uh, so after that, we go into once the like art director, which is me. So he would take these concepts, go to the art director. Art director points them out, gives you some feedback, points you in the right direction, or also takes part sometimes if the art director is concept artist, and you in contact with the game designers, and then some. We finally come to a concept that is locked down, which means that okay, yeah, we like this. This is it. We want to go with what you have here. Oops, that's the wrong one. Let's open this. Yeah. So this is a look that we're going for. Now you can see probably that a lot of this changed. This compared to if I can maybe open this up side by side. I've got 2 screens here, so let's see how this works. That guy. Yeah, here we go. Kind of like it's not exactly the same. There were some changes I made later when I started actually putting it together, and yeah, we'll get to how that works in a second. But that was kind of like what I came up with. So then I went into modeling, and for that I used 3ds Max. And here's the final one we put together here. So But before we got to this phase, we have a phase that is called gray boxing. Now, for those who don't know, gray boxing is basically what sketching is to painting and drawing. That you have an idea for a big picture, but you start with a little sketch, kind of feel out the composition, and you feel out kind of the shapes. And same goes for gray boxing. But with this is you also kind of, the idea is to find issues, possible issues, things that you might need, pieces that you might need or that you don't need. Because I had a lot of pieces here actually that I kind of just cut out because it's like, I don't need that. I can reuse similar ones. And I mean here, like the cylinders, they all have various versions of each other. You have that this one is straight. You have one that you can come up from different sides and so forth. And the tanks, theoretically they can be all be single, but I wanted them grouped. It makes no sense to have a tank just by itself in this kind of thing. Same goes for the smaller tanks. The rings, as you can see here, they're a different shape. I originally had it, I wanted to have a different size ring, and when I put that together and the pieces and I played around with it, I just didn't like it. Didn't look good, so I just scrapped it. But the idea is that you can take these in to Unreal and play around with them, or you would give it to the level designers and they would play around with them, and yeah, they can do what they want. The thing is that yeah, so when I was happy, I saw what we could do, we meaning me, with these pieces and what I needed, what I didn't need. I came back to Max, and the thing is, you don't need to do this in a third party app. You can do this in Unreal just using the actors and stuff that you have here. But how much here? But in my previous trial, we had an engine that did not have this option, or it did, but it was very very simplistic. So yeah, and I just find it easier to model and move things around inside Max. And it could be anything. It could be Blender, it could be Maya, it could be any kind of program that you want to use, Modo and so forth. So I had these pieces, then I started to, once things were locked down, these fit together fine, they look good, and they kind of followed these guidelines of this, where we had the boxes and the cylinders that we wanted. It was time to model the actual models. In hindsight, I'm jumping in here to show the actual gray boxes. Well, these aren't the actual gray boxes. I mean, these were the next phase when they weren't textured yet. So, and as I'm not rambling enough in the whole video, I'm going to add some more. These are the pieces that were instanced. And so all of these, I think all of these, okay. I'm not sure if every single one of these were, actually, yeah, these were the last ones. These were the ones that were all used. Here you can see the pieces that were made to make the ring, etc. And these were just, for instance, rotated around, copies. Well, actually, they're made into an instance. Same goes for these. And these were on a separate level here in Max. And so I don't have it anymore, unfortunately, but I had a whole space station. It was made up of just these, no textures, and that's what I played around with to get the final look before I took it into texture. Uh, yeah, so that's that. Back to the ramble. So, the thing is, and I'll point this out as well. When you gray box, it's very, very loose. It's you don't put a whole lot of time in it. I mean, these took like an hour to make at tops. But I think a lot of it was, maybe it could have been more, because a lot of it was not the actual making of it, but actually thinking and what do we need as I was making them and testing them out. So you don't put a whole lot of time into gray boxing. Gray boxing is just to see if things fit together. Is there something we got to think about? Do we need something extra? Do we want to cut something out? And it's like, it's less the whole process about making these, putting them in the game, playing around with them. It's less than a day. I mean, really, it's, you don't put a whole lot of time into that. I mean, I've worked with pipelines that were much less than that, and I've worked with some that were like extremely more. And so that depends on the professionality of the crew you're working with. But yeah, not a whole lot of time it should go into your gray boxing. I mean, you got to think things through, but you don't want to waste your valuable time playing around with sketching. So I'm just going to pop in here and say that even though the actual making of the gray boxes shouldn't take that much time, you will possibly and more than likely be working in and with the gray boxes for quite some time to get things set up and see that the gameplay works, everything is smooth and so forth. But just what I'm pointing out here is just the actual creation of those gray boxes shouldn't take up like weeks and weeks and weeks of your precious budget. After that, you start modeling, and I, I don't. I think I had some speed of ups of the map. I don't know where they are right now, but thing is that finally ended up with these, and yet, as you can see here, they're all set up as they are in Unreal, and there's a reason behind that. Now, the way these are set up is that each one of these is a separate piece, uh, and you can see these are grouped together. These are pieces like this, and what I did was in Max, I made the separate pieces, and then I just instanced them. So this is instance of this guy, and so forth. These are, there's an instance, a copy of that, which is just basically an instance. So uh, spread around, and I kind of changed the model, or the station, the whole station. It kind of changed from this a bit. And now there is one of the differences between a big pipeline, a small indie team, and a solo dev. So if you're in a big pipeline, a big company, and this is the concept that lands on your table. Okay, was decided upon. This was locked down, as they say. Uh, Everybody loves it. Do this. Uh, that's what you do. I mean, you can play around. The idea behind this is that they're modular and that you can make an infinite amount of different kinds of space stations. That's the whole idea. But if, say, this is the concept that they made using those pieces that you are about to make, then that's what you're supposed to make. However, depending on your team, if the level designers come up and they use those pieces and make something else, and they just pass it by uh, the art director, the game designer, directors, and so forth, and then depending on, first of all, is it a good idea, and also depending on the ego of certain people, will it they accept it or not. Uh, but in big pipelines, you don't really deviate from the plan. Small indie teams, when a lot of people wear different hats or several hats at the same time, uh, the art director, concept artist, and the level designer might be the same guy. And so with me, it's solo dev, and as you know, and all you solo devs out there, you got to wear a lot of hats. There's more hats than you can fit on your head. Anyways, so uh, you can make changes because you don't have to sit down and have a meeting with a gazillion people and get it approved by 1,000 people. So if you come up with a better idea, and that's one of the things I've had to struggle with in the past is with working on some teams that weren't as organized and professional as they should be. Is that people love to change their mind and come up when a better idea comes along or a funner idea or and so one of the things on big teams, you got budgets and you got deadlines. And one thing you have to realize, and same goes for solo devs as well, because I got a budget and a deadline for myself, and I'm organized. I'm using organized software to keep myself going on that, and I'll make a video about that as well. It's really good. I use Hack and Plan, and it keeps me organized and going. But yeah, one thing you have to realize that there will always be a better idea, and that's something that some people find hard. And if they, you know, if they're one of these people who just uh, get distracted easily and don't understand how the pipeline works, and if you have too many yes men around who don't want to stick to the plan, well then, yeah, you'll find yourself in a load of trouble really fast. So yeah, that's something to be aware about. Yeah, sticking to the ideas and the plans you have. Of course, some things will change. That is something you have to keep in mind that the changes do happen, and I'm all for it. Even you're especially during the gray boxing phase, you're both trying to eliminate those, and that's why you have your art lead and your art directors and pointing things out. Like we can do that, we can't do that. We got to think about this. We got a budget. We got how much time is that going to take? Yada yada, blah blah. So uh, yeah. But anyways, moving right along. So I had this set up. Now you could do this in completely in Unreal. Bring the pieces in and put them together, and the pieces are there so that if you go in geometry here. Well, yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. You can uh, do it, put it together in Unreal, or what I did, and I think for me personally, and also maybe as a solo dev, it was much easier because I was doing everything myself, so it didn't matter in that sense where I did it, as long as things came in the right way. And the right way means that you have all these copies, and you don't want to bring every single one in as a its own piece. So like these guys here are all the same geometry basically. So if you bring those in, you could possibly bring them in the wrong way, which would be that they are uh, all separate pieces, and that's just and with their own separate materials, which are all copies of each other. So these are instances, and what I did was I put these together and made sure that everything that was not a copy, it was an instance. And so when I take this whole thing I export it as with Datasmith, and that's important. So you export it as a Datasmith file. So when you bring it into Unreal, it recognizes. Sorry, had a dog situation in the background. So it recognizes instances, and it will make those for you. So you won't have a gazillion pieces for your space station or whatever it is you're making. Um, yeah, and that was really handy and extremely important. So I can do it in uh, 3ds Max with no problem, and bring it into Unreal with no problem. Yeah, so and that's kind of basically it. I mean, it's uh, one thing should bring up as well is very important. In a big pipeline, this would be. I mean, as a game artist, you should know this, but if not, it will be at least brought up to you by your lead about texture budgets uh, and size and so forth. So for these, every piece, I did use trim sheets, and for that, there was what was the company? I'm blanking now. It was there's a plugin or a script out there for Max and for Substance Painter, which helps you along. It splits it up for you in. I'm completely blanking now. Sorry, guys. Anybody in the comment section, put it out there. I might put it up myself, and I'll Google it. But yeah, so I did use trim sheets, and the idea behind that is I did like 3 or 4 of them, and the idea is that a lot of these pieces, instead of being textured in Substance, each in every one separately, so they each have a different texture. They share, they're flattened out and split up into the trim sheets, and they share a lot of the textures. And what that does is just like having these instances of themselves, not every single piece is a separate piece. Same goes for textures. That it just saves memory and it optimizes your project, especially if you have a huge project like this. Well, not this is not that huge. I mean, there's this is minuscule on this scale of things, but yeah, it just optimizes things a lot, so you can share textures. And I mean, I mean, you can get up close and not really notice it. So uh, yeah, it's the way to work. Uh, and I mean, everybody knows about trim sheets these days. I mean, they have been around for a while, so it's not like we're reinventing the wheel or anything. But it depends on what kind of team you're in. Some leads know about it, love it, are into it, and some leads are clueless. But that's just the way people are. So uh, I've worked with both. So that was that, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Uh, yeah. So next week I will be getting the other stuff. I have been working, not this. This has been put aside now. So I will be showing some character stuff, lots of concepts, environment concepts, because besides this, you pop down onto the planet or one of the planets, uh, and concepts for that, and some gameplay. Yeah. So besides that, subscribe, like, all that YouTube jive, and I'll see you next week.